I grew up in a small town in West Virginia, the kind of place where you recognize every face in the grocery store and where nothing ever really happens. When I started college, I didn't go far, just 15 minutes away. A small university in a smaller town. It was 2021, and the campus still felt half empty because of COVID. Most students didn't stay in the dorms that year. They rented small apartments nearby or studied from home. But I couldn't afford that. I stayed on campus, in a quiet building that always felt too still at night. I wanted the full college experience, even if it was a strange time for it. On my first day, I met my roommate. We'd texted a few times before move-in day. The school gave her my number so we could talk. She'd seemed nice enough, but in person, there was something distant about her. She was polite, sure, but quiet. The kind of quiet that fills the air with tension. She spoke like she was used to getting her way. I remember her saying, everyone had their own rooms last semester because of how few students there were. I did too, until you joined. She didn't say it to be cruel, but it lingered with me. I told her I'd usually go home on weekends since my house wasn't far. She didn't respond much, just nodded. Most days she stayed with her boyfriend in another dorm, so the room was usually mine alone. That first Friday, I packed up and drove home. It felt good to leave. When I came back Monday morning, just after 6, the building was silent. The air always felt colder that early. I didn't have class until 10, so I crawled into bed and let the weight of the mattress pull me down. 10 minutes later, I felt the edge of the bed sink, just slightly, like someone had leaned their hand on it. I froze. The room was dim, just the glow of my alarm clock cutting through the dark. I didn't move, didn't say anything. After a few seconds, the pressure lifted. I rolled over slowly. She was in her bed, facing the wall. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe my imagination, maybe the mattress shifting. I went back to sleep. The next weekend, the same routine. Home Friday, back by Monday at 6. Still half asleep, I crawled into bed. Minutes later, it happened again, but this time, it wasn't just the edge. Half the mattress sank down. Someone was sitting next to me. I could feel their weight, their presence. It was unmistakable. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. Then, the pressure lifted, followed by the faint sound of someone stepping down onto the floor. My bed was high enough that you needed a step stool to climb up. So I heard the soft thump as they dropped down. I turned my head. She was still there, lying perfectly still, facing the wall. My heart wouldn't slow down. I kept asking myself if I was dreaming or half awake. Maybe it was sleep paralysis, but no, I could move. I could think. By the next Monday, I was on edge. I barely slept that weekend. When I got back to campus, she was already in bed, facing my side this time. Her eyes were closed. I told myself she was asleep. I laid down, turned my face toward the wall, and tried to calm my breathing. 5 minutes passed. Then I felt it again, the slow indent, closer this time. Then a hand. It rested on the back of my neck. Not hard, not pushing, just there. Cold, still. My whole body locked up. Every instinct screamed at me to move, but I couldn't. It stayed there for what felt like minutes, maybe longer. Then, the weight lifted. The bed rose slightly, and silence filled the room again. When I finally found the strength to move, she was still lying there facing away, breathing slow, steady. I left without saying a word, grabbed my phone and keys, and walked straight out into the cold morning air. I called my mom. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. She contacted the school. They let me switch rooms that same day. They asked if I wanted to involve the police, but I said no. There wasn't proof, just fear. I only asked that she never get another roommate. That night, while unpacking in my new room, a few details came back to me. She'd once told me her previous roommate didn't stay long, but she'd never said why. And one afternoon, she opened a locked drawer. Inside were maybe 10 prescription bottles. She said they were for a skin condition, but I remember thinking she didn't look sick. A few days later, she texted me, said I'd left a book and a binder behind. I didn't even want them back, but she insisted, so I went. The door was unlocked when I arrived. She wasn't there, and I felt a small wave of relief. I grabbed my things quickly, but when I turned around, she was standing in the doorway. I hadn't heard her come in, not even the sound of the door handle. She smiled faintly. Didn't say anything at first. I muttered something, a thanks maybe, and started walking past her. That's when she asked, "Where's your new room?" Her tone was light, almost casual, but she didn't look away. I told her it was on the first floor. She asked which hall. I lied. Then she asked where exactly. Near the stairs, the office, the front door. I told her I didn't remember. She smiled again, just slightly. I walked away. That was the last time I saw her. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't moved out. If I'd opened my eyes that morning instead of pretending to sleep. Maybe she was sleepwalking. Maybe the medication made her do strange things. But deep down, I don't think that's it. I think she knew exactly what she was doing. And I think she was waiting to see just how close she could get before I woke up. I used to work night security for a small business complex just outside Knoxville. 5 buildings, all connected by a narrow parking lot and a chain-link fence that barely stood straight. It wasn't a bad job, just quiet. Too quiet sometimes. My shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 6. I'd do a few patrols around the property, check that the lights were off, doors locked, cameras working. Then I'd sit in the front office with my coffee and the sound of fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The company that hired me didn't pay much, but I didn't mind. Most nights, nothing happened. No alarms, no people, no calls, until one Thursday. I remember because it was raining, a slow, steady kind of rain that never let up. The kind that soaked into the asphalt and made everything smell like metal and mud. Around midnight, one of the motion alarms tripped. Building 3, top floor. I walked over with my flashlight, cutting through the wet air. The glass doors at the entrance were fogged. Inside, the security lights flickered like a pulse. Now, these offices weren't new. They were built in the early 2000s. Low ceilings, drop tiles, long carpeted halls that made your footsteps sound heavy and hollow. It always smelled faintly of dust and printer ink. When I reached the second floor, the sensor light above the stairwell clicked on. I scanned each office. All the doors were closed except one, near the far end of the hall. It was cracked open just enough for a shadow to slip through. I pushed it open slowly. The office inside was empty. A few desks, a whiteboard with notes still on it. No one had been in this building for days. The company that used that space worked from home now. I checked the windows. Locked. Nothing unusual. I was about to reset the alarm when I heard something above me. Not loud, just a faint shifting sound, like someone crawling through insulation. Then, a soft creak. I looked up. One of the ceiling tiles near the center of the room was slightly ajar. Not broken, just moved, like someone had lifted it and set it back wrong. I stood there, flashlight shaking a little in my hand. If someone was up there, they'd have to be lying flat between the beams, barely any space to move. I called out, "Hello." No answer, just the sound of rain against the windows. I radioed the other guard, but he was on the opposite end of the complex. Told me to check it first, then call if I saw anything. I didn't want to, but I did. I grabbed a chair, set it under the loose tile, and climbed up. When I lifted it, the smell hit me first. Something sour, rotten almost. The beam from my flashlight cut through insulation dust, and for a moment, I saw something move. Not fast, just a small, deliberate shift deeper in the dark, like a knee or an elbow brushing insulation. I froze. Then I heard it. A long, slow inhale. Someone breathing. I stumbled down from the chair, almost fell, back toward the door. The ceiling went still again. No sound. I ran back down the hall and called my partner. He came in 5 minutes later, half joking, half annoyed. But when we went back up, he smelled it too. That same faint rot. He climbed up himself. When he came back down, he looked pale. Said there were wrappers up there, water bottles, blankets. Someone had been living in the ceiling. We called the police. They searched the space with flashlights and masks, found a small hole in the insulation that led to a maintenance crawl space above the ventilation system. Whoever it was had made a little nest up there. Food, clothes, even a small lamp plugged into an outlet in the wall. But no one was there, just the leftovers of a life hiding above other lives. The police said it wasn't the first time something like that had happened. Homeless people sometimes found ways into old office buildings. They'd move between ceilings, stay warm, stay hidden. It made sense. But something about this felt different. A week later, one of the cleaning staff found a note taped under her desk. Just a single sheet of paper that read, "It's too loud down here." The handwriting was small, shaky. After that, I couldn't stop thinking about it. About the way that ceiling tile had been nudged aside. Not ripped, not broken, carefully lifted. Like someone who'd been doing it for a while. We replaced the tiles, sealed the vents, even installed cameras in the stairwells. But a few nights later, I came in for my shift, and one of the cameras had been turned. Not broken, just angled slightly upward, toward the ceiling. I told the manager. He laughed it off, said maybe the cleaners bumped it. I didn't argue, but I watched it the rest of the night. Around 3 a.m., the same motion alarm went off. Building 3, top floor, same room. This time, I didn't go alone. We went together, lights and radios ready. But when we opened the door, nothing. The tile was still in place. Everything looked untouched, except for the chair, the one I'd used to look up the first time. It had been moved back under the ceiling, perfectly centered. I quit that job 2 days later. Didn't even finish my notice. The manager said I was overreacting, that the whole thing was just a squatter. Maybe he's right. But some nights, when it rains, I still hear that sound in my head. The soft shifting of insulation, and that long, quiet breath above me. When I was 11, my cousins and I spent most summers at my grandparents' cabin in eastern Tennessee. It wasn't really a cabin, more of an old hunting house deep in the woods, half a mile from the nearest paved road. No phone service, just the sound of crickets and the river running somewhere beyond the trees. We loved it. We'd climb rocks, chase fireflies, play tag until dark. But our favorite game was hide and seek, because in those woods, there were 100 places to disappear. One evening, just before sunset, my cousin Ethan suggested we play after dark. He said it'd be scarier, more fun. My grandparents were inside watching TV, so we thought, why not? The air was thick and humid, the sky turning deep orange. We each grabbed a flashlight and spread out behind the house. Ethan counted. The rest of us ran. The woods weren't huge, but they felt endless at night. The trees stood close together, branches hanging low enough to brush your hair as you passed. I ran toward the old storage shed, a small rusted structure my grandfather used to keep tools in. I ducked behind it and crouched low. The smell of damp soil filled the air. It was quiet enough that I could hear my heartbeat, and for a while, nothing happened. Then, footsteps, crunching slowly through leaves, getting closer. I turned off my flashlight, held my breath, and waited for Ethan to shout, "Found you!" But the footsteps didn't stop. They kept circling, slowly, deliberately. I whispered his name. No answer. The footsteps paused, then started again, moving away this time, into the trees. I waited a full minute before stepping out. The sky had gone dark purple by then, the crickets louder. When I clicked on my light, the beam cut through a wall of mist drifting from the creek. "Ethan," I called. No reply, just the echo of my own voice bouncing off the trees. I figured maybe he'd found someone else first, so I started walking back. But as I reached the clearing near the house, I saw all three of my cousins already standing there. They were arguing about who'd been found first. Ethan was with them. My stomach sank. I asked who'd been walking behind the shed. They looked at me like I was joking. Ethan said he never went near it. He'd been on the other side of the property. I laughed it off, but part of me knew I hadn't imagined those footsteps. We played one more round before heading inside. That night, while brushing my teeth, I looked out the small bathroom window toward the tree line. There was nothing there, just blackness between trunks. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still out there, watching. The next morning, my grandfather mentioned something strange. He'd found footprints by the shed, bare ones, smaller than his, but wider than any of ours. He figured it was a neighbor's kid, or maybe a drifter passing through. We didn't think much of it until the following night. It was late, maybe close to midnight. Everyone was asleep. I woke to a sound, soft tapping against the window near my bed. Not knocking, just the light rhythm of fingers brushing glass. At first, I thought it was branches, but there were no trees that close. I stared for a long time, afraid to move. The tapping stopped. Then came a voice. Very quiet, almost a whisper. "Come out. Let's play." I froze. Didn't breathe. Didn't blink. A moment later, something scraped slowly across the glass, like a nail. Then silence. I pulled the blanket over my head and stayed that way until dawn. When the sun finally came up, I told my grandfather. He checked outside. Nothing there. No footprints this time. Just dew and tall grass. Still, that evening, he nailed a sheet of plywood over the window. "Just in case," he said. He didn't smile when he said it. For the rest of that week, we stopped playing outside after dark. No one wanted to talk about it. But on our last night there, something happened again. Around 2 a.m., the dogs started barking, both of them loud and wild. My grandfather grabbed his shotgun and went outside. The rest of us stood at the window trying to see. He walked out with a flashlight, its beam swinging across the yard. Then he stopped near the shed. I could see the light shaking in his hand. He didn't move for a long time. When he came back, he told us to stay inside and lock the doors. We asked what he saw. He said nothing. But the next morning, he burned the old shed down. Said it was falling apart, full of mold. We didn't argue. We never went back after that summer. The land's still in the family, but the cabin's been empty for years. Sometimes I drive past it on my way to work. It's only about 30 minutes off the highway. The windows are boarded, the roof's caving in. The woods have started to swallow it. But every time I stop at the bend in the road, I can still see the spot where that shed used to stand. And once, just once, I thought I saw someone there, not moving, just standing by the tree line, barefoot. Maybe it was my eyes playing tricks, or maybe some games never really end. They just wait for you to come back.